I'm a caretaker on Seguin Island, Entry 2, I'm Never Alone Here. Written by NewUnknowns. Before you listen any further, please make sure that you've heard my first entry in this series by clicking the card in the top left corner. Thanks. I don't think that I've slept for more than an hour or two at a time without waking up. I find myself wondering if I'm truly awake or living some twisted, drawn-out dream. I've questioned my sanity more than I'd ever admit to anybody face to face. This blog is the one thing keeping me tethered to reality these last few weeks. I desperately need some rest, but whatever it is that resides here has a full itinerary for me. That has been made clear to me from the start. This island is a trial by fire. The night after signing off of my first entry, I quickly realized that despite what I thought when I accepted this job, I'm never alone here. I have had eyes on me no matter where I go. Now, I'm not one to flinch. And I'm not somebody who'll run from his fears. I face them head on and I handle whatever consequences later. I'll see this through, even if it kills me. After that little girl in the pretty blue dress disappeared from those lighthouse stairs, eyes started popping up all over the island. The first pair found me just as I was beginning to doze off, but a shuffling sound startled me. A red glow started to illuminate the room from behind me, painting the walls infrared looking. When I finally found the balls to turn around, there they were. Two huge eyes pressed hard against the glass of the window, staring right at me. The shades to the window were pulled completely open, and that sinister light was beaming in. I have no idea where it was coming from or what it was, but I felt as if the world was going to end in an instant. Dread and panic flooded my veins like a cold shot of morphine. I jumped out of bed with as much force as I could muster, and I pulled the curtains closed. As I pulled them, I saw that the eyes were attached to something. They looked like vines, and they were coming from the garden. I tied the curtains closed, my hands slippery from panicked sweat. The strings kept falling out from between my fingers. I never did get back to sleep that night. I don't know if those eyes ever left, but my gut tells me that they stayed, because the red glow remained until dawn. When I finally noticed the sunlight, it angelically surfed the grooves of the curtains. It's as if it softly announced its presence, that it was here to protect me, and that all was safe now. I couldn't help but laugh, as I chuckled cynically as it burned away at the evil. There is no way that this was real. This whole thing has got to be a prank, like a television show or something, right? I decided that I was going to go and confront Mariah first thing. I hoisted myself up from the bed with this newfound frustration, my body burning it as fuel in place of sleep. I made my way out to the guest quarters where she had spent the night. I cracked open the door and poked my head out to look to the left side where the window was. Everything seemed to be relatively normal, aside from the sudden overgrowth of orange lichen and tons of thin, slimy-looking orange veins, all pouring out of the garden. They were growing up the side of my quarters, right along the window frame. I knew that I'd have to deal with that later and before sundown. I couldn't help but wonder if I could get my hands on a flamethrower during Wednesday's supply run. Probably not. Get going, Wolf. Walk out the door now, I told myself. I had to hear a voice, something to ground me so that I could move forward. They're just plants. These are all just plants. It's an island. It's natural. At least there's no... After only a few steps forward, I stopped dead in my tracks. Eyes. This time there were hundreds, in the maple trees that shaded my quarters. They were attached to the branches and spread all over, their gaze shifting with every movement that I made. They didn't blink, only pulsated. They were bulging and swelling as they watched me. The larger ones had a reddish hue, and their pupils were vertical black slits down the middle. They had intent behind their gaze. They carried judgment. Walk, wolf. Just keep walking. Don't look at them. This is just a dream. I tried looking down and walking, but I couldn't decide what would be harder. Watching them watch me, or letting them watch while I looked away. I picked my head up and I looked at them again. Enough of this. What are you looking at, huh? What do you want? I yelled at them. All at once, the eyes closed. Their lids looked like a ball of leaves crumpled up along the branches of the tree. I noticed, though, that those eyes of judgment didn't close. They were different. Instead, they grew larger and they seemed to open wider. I booked it to the guest quarters and I pounded my fist against the door. "Open the door, Mariah! Open the door right now!" I yelled with my face right up against the door as I kept knocking. I heard the lock quickly open before the doorknob turned. I pushed through and went inside. Mariah was right there, wrapped in a fluffy purple bathrobe. It must have been a special order to fit her height. "Whoa, easy, Wolf. You almost knocked me over," Mariah said. Concerned, but obviously a little ticked off. "You look terrible. Are you backing out already?" she said. She asked this as if she already knew. With shallow breaths, I shuffled over to a chair in the dining area without bothering to shut the front door. "No, I'm not backing out. But what's going on here? You're pulling my leg, and enough is enough. What TV show am I on? Where are the cameras?" I started throwing things around the room. I was checking everywhere for them. "You got me," I said. "Let me just get to my work and be left in peace." I felt hot. My face must have been redder than a tomato. That happens when I get angry and drunk. I blame it on my Irish blood. "Wolf, darling." She quickly changed to a soothing tone. "There are no cameras. There's no television show. This is not a joke. This is the island in its raw form. Please calm down and let's work this out." She retied the loose drawstring on her robe before walking over to the door. "This thing just won't tie like it used to. It's hanging by a thread." She placed a hand on the door before turning to me. "The tourists hear about the ghost stories. The tale of the serpent, or of the ghost ships off the shore. And they're all true. But they don't see the real evil here. They don't see the reason why those stories are true. My team and I have been trying to figure that out for years." "Then why doesn't somebody from your team take care of this place instead of hiring new applicants every year?" I just wasn't buying it. I couldn't accept the fact that this was in existence. I couldn't let go of the feeling that she was lying to me. "Well, we tried that. But honestly, no one wants to. We don't stay here longer than a day or so, and that's only when we need to, like in this case. And we sure never come here when a storm is in the forecast." Mariah's tone was nonchalant, and she fed me these lines as if she had recited them 1,000,000 times before. I got out of the chair and I walked right up to her and I looked her in the eyes. "Stop it. You and your crew leave me alone and take down all those silly props on the trees by my quarters. Just get lost. I'll continue my work and I expect to be paid when it's finished." The hot feeling on my face was now burning. I felt an all too familiar rage building up inside of me. One that I had spent a lot of years trying to learn how to tame. Mariah let out a giggle. She pointed one of her lanky fingers at me. "You saw the eyes." What happened after that isn't my fault. I told her how I felt. I tried to get her to stop. I tried to tell her to leave. She had her opportunity to come clean and leave me to myself, but she didn't. She just kept playing her game and wouldn't shut up about it. Neither of us knew that the fog was coming again so soon. The sun was just out 5 minutes ago. Mariah should have been paying attention. She should have known that it'd be coming back. She should have told me. In my rage, I pushed her before she could close the door. She stumbled outside and had a few choice words for me. But when she looked over at the shore, it was already too late. The fog was past the shoreline and quickly taking ground. The screams were echoing behind the desperate cries and fits of laughter. I could see the edge of the island already being consumed by it. I slammed the door and I locked it. After the fog passes and she's still sitting at the front door alive, she'll have no choice but to give it all up. I'd finally be able to have some peace and quiet. The symphony of torment played loudly while the fog passed. Mariah screamed frantically and bashed on the door. "Let me in! You have no idea what you're doing!" I could hear her voice breaking from the sheer force of her screams. The bashing on the door intensified. It was violent as it sped up and crashed harder and harder. Boom, 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 crack. With the last crash, I heard the door splinter. Wow, she was strong, I thought. I opened the door to let her in. This had gone far enough. I really didn't want to have to fix a broken door on top of everything else going on. When I opened the door, Mariah's dead weight fell right into me. Her forehead was almost completely caved in. Pieces of her flesh were caked in the cracks that she had made on the front door. Blood poured down as if it were just dumping out of a paint can. Her purple drawstring was tied around her neck, almost cutting into her skin. The call of the void is the real deal. It had even taken an insurance policy out on her. If she didn't kill herself by bashing her brains in, she'd have strangled herself. Everything that she told me was true. And if I wasn't such a coward, she'd still be alive. Mariah, I'm so sorry that I didn't believe you. I'm sorry for what happened. If I ever see you again in another life, I'll make it up to you, somehow. On my next supply run, after what happened with Mariah, I figured I'd make the call to the company to give them the story. I planned on quitting. I had already had my things packed and on the boat. I stood at the bow, watching the fishermen dock as the phone rang. I'd tell them that I was done and I'd leave it all behind. Yet it was a very strange conversation. They weren't pleased with what had happened. But their reaction, well, it wasn't exactly what you'd expect after admitting that you were, in a way, an accessory to murder.
Well, this is unfortunate news, Mr. Hagar. Still, I'm afraid you will need to report back to the island as soon as you finish gathering your supplies. You've signed a contract, don't forget that. You're bound in blood.
The metallic voice at the other end of the line laughed. He had a trained voice, one that spent a lot of time perfecting that customer service etiquette. But it was mixed with the tone of a real wise-ass. It was business as usual as far as he was concerned, because he didn't care that she was dead.
Miss Mariah knew the risk, and she took them for us gladly each year for the last 10 years. Now, I do apologize for your experience, but it's all part of the job. Head back now, Mr. Hagar, or we'll know. We've got eyes everywhere.
The mysterious voice threatened.
Oh, and I almost forgot. You'll be escorting a special guest back with you to stay in the guest quarters. He's made a very generous donation to our affiliation, so make sure that he's comfortable. Ta-ta.
Before I could even respond, there was a click. He had hung up on me. Eyes everywhere. That comment made my blood run cold, because something in the pit of my stomach told me that I should believe him. If there's one thing that I've learned, it's to believe in the unbelievable. Something else was telling me that I was not going to like this guest very much at all. It was almost on cue, because as soon as I hung up the phone, a man in a very expensive-looking black suit stepped onto the boat. He had glimmering cufflinks that looked as if they were diamonds, and his blood-red tie was neatly tucked into his jacket. He tipped his hat with 2 fingers to greet me hello, but he didn't say a word. He just smiled, and in an instant I knew that this was going down a dark road, because when he did, he revealed 3 rows of pointy, needle-like teeth. I didn't say a word back to him on the trip back to the island. He sat in the boat cabin quietly, with his legs crossed and his hands folded over his lap. He is the first man that I have ever met that has genuinely scared me. I still don't know his name, and I'm not sure that I want it. I just want him gone. Things have felt heavy ever since he's gotten here. He hasn't left his quarters once, and it's been 2 days now. I don't know when he's leaving, and I'm starting to get a sinking feeling that he'll be knocking on my door soon enough. I've been trying my hardest to function and keep a level head. I've made sure to wake up bright and early and start a schedule for myself. I tend to the gardens first thing. Then I hit the trail maintenance before lunch. I bought a ton of tuna fish, so I crack open a can at the top of the lighthouse and admire the beauty of the shore. When your back's up against the wall, you've got to find things that will preserve your sanity.